Hello and welcome back to the show. It is the first one of the year. I feel a little bit rusty. I'm not gonna lie. I set this up. I've tried to record the intro 3 times already, and I'm like, oh man, this feels like I haven't done this for ages, and it's actually because I haven't. Yeah, welcome to 2024, episode 1 of the year. And I just wanted to say, first of all, had a little bit of a lazy start to January initially. I decided to take like the 2 weeks off at the beginning of January because, well, I actually only thought it was one, except I blocked my calendar out for the extra week, not realizing it. And then when I looked at the calendar whilst I was on holidays, I was like, oh my gosh, I actually accidentally gave myself an additional week off, which I mean was fine. But in that 2 week period from like the beginning of January to when I kicked off like consults, I was like a bit bored. And that was because I had heaps of things that I wanted to do for the year for 2024. I have all these like really cool ideas. And when I take time away from my work, I find there is so much space for me to be a bit more creative. And I come up with all these like really cool things that I want to do that are normally not so great when I am really busy and tired and fatigued. So, like, the whole Christmas week was great, had the time off, saw family, had a great time, and then like everything kind of calmed down and it was New Year. I don't do anything for New Year because I'm a bit boring. But we had that time off and I was like, yep, I'm motivated for work. I'm going to get stuck into it. And then I was like, I've got 2 weeks, chill out, enjoy yourself, go do some things. And in that time, all I could like, I just was like, I actually don't know what to do. Like, what do people do when they're not working and like trying to hustle and run a business and build things? So I actually was like, Courtney, mate, you need a hobby. And I mean, like, we go motorbike riding and we do things like that, but over that break, we had some bike difficulties, so we couldn't actually go anywhere. And I think that made me realize, like, oh, I actually don't do anything outside of this. So anyway, I'm gonna get myself a new hobby, and I'll share that with you a little bit later on in the next couple of weeks when I kick my new hobby off because or whatever. I'm starting. I'm excited. I'm starting ceramics course, which I have wanted to do for so long. And I just kept putting it off because I was like, I can't make that class because I work. And then I can't make that class because I work. And then the only other time the class is on the Sunday. And that's the only day I have off. So I don't want to commit in case I want to go away. So I was like, I never did it. So this time I saw it. It's in the town. It's for beginners. And I'm going to learn how to make ceramic mugs, which is a little bit random, but I'm excited. So that doesn't start till the end of January. So I'm hoping, like, I mean, it's pretty hard to do that hobby outside of the class, really. But you never know. Maybe I'll get myself a spin wheel or something. Maybe I'll hate it. I don't know. But anyway, I'm excited about that. But it made me realize, like, Courtney, mate, you need some more hobbies that are outside of work. Even though I love it and I'm like, I actually really enjoy this type of stuff and I get lots of satisfaction. But I was like, when you're not actually doing work related things, I'm like, do I just sit on the land and like watch Netflix or I don't know what to do. So anyway, a little bit of a story for me. But anyway, I ended up going back to work a week earlier than I expected, because I had all these things to do and I felt like I should just get started and I'm not seeing clients this week, so I'll do all the back end. So anyway, I hope you actually enjoyed your break and you had things to do, unlike me. But anyway, I actually wanted to, before we kick off the actual episode, I really want to ask a favor. And that favor is that if you find value in this show and the things that I share, please share this with whoever you think would also find value, whether that's your Instagram and your following, whether it's your colleagues, whether it's both, whether it's your best friend who's also in healthcare or business or whatever that might be. I really want to dedicate a bit more time this year to the education space. And I would really, really appreciate you helping me spread the word about my social media presence, whether that's like my education page or my other one, mostly my education page, because most of you listening here are professionals, but also the podcast and the show, because I really, really, really want to be able to connect with more of you. I want to build a bit of a place that really helps with both the clinical skills for practitioners as well as the women's health knowledge, but also the mindset side of things. I just really believe that those two things come together. And I wanted to actually talk about that because today is a mindset topic. And I want to talk a little bit about why I think the mindset and the self-development side of the education that I deliver is so important. And I think when we're thinking about being an awesome practitioner, it isn't just about skills. So there are two things that are going to make you really, really good at what you do. And together they help you feel a little bit more satisfied and fulfilled in your work. So the first one being the hard skills. They like are really important, having the skill set around your work, but it doesn't mean you actually care about what you do, nor do you have passionate about that. There are plenty of people who are really, really good at what they do, but they just don't have the care factor. Whereas the second part of this is the self-development and the mindset side. This is about creating the best version of yourself and caring about being better at what you do in all aspects. It doesn't mean it's just about the skill set side, but it's going to be about creating a service that is really optimal. It's going to be about leading others that are in your environment, and whether that's like your immediate colleagues, whether it's your clients, whether it's even people just around you. Because if people can see that you're trying to better yourself and improve yourself, this is really inspirational for people. And it is really, really helpful, especially also when you're trying to be better at your practical skills. So you will not keep working on your practical skills if you lose the passion and you lose the care factor, and you don't, like, we've seen these people in our workplaces where you're like, you're really good at what you do, except you just also don't care enough about it. And you're not like, you don't treat your clients really well. You're not there to support them. You're not giving them the little extra bits and pieces that are really making a difference. Those clients then aren't spreading the word about what you do and helping your personal reputation build, and then you get more people. So like, when we think about really being great at anything you do, whether it's women's health, whether it's you're an EP or a fitness professional, health professional, in any other aspect, it's about being good at the stuff and having the knowledge and the skills, but also doing the work to be better at what you do. And that's mindset side, and that's skill development, awareness, habits that you do, all these other things that layer onto it. So I really believe that you can have all the knowledge and the hard skills, but without constantly working on yourself and building a strong mentality, having passion tends to be missing. And ultimately, you end up just turning up for work, not really caring, and then not delivering a great service. And it's extremely obvious to people who are seeing you. So that's why I share a lot about the mindset side of things. And I know that a lot of you also following along are either working for yourself, so this stuff is extremely relevant and important, or you're thinking about doing something within your workplace that might be inside someone else's business, but you want to be a little bit more, I guess you call it like intrapreneurial, whatever, entrepreneurial, I mean, you get the drift. Basically, you've got all these like entrepreneurial, oh, that's embarrassing. You've got all these skill sets to like do your own thing, but you don't really want to do your own thing. You need support, you need stability, you want people around you. So that's a really, really cool place to be in, because you can do a lot there and you can have a very satisfying career. So that's why I share this stuff. And I love it personally. I could talk about mindset and business development and self-development all the time because I love it. But anyway, we're going to kick off the first episode of the year with the mindset episode. And if you've been watching along on my education page stories, you will know that I asked a little bit of inspiration around topics. And every one of the topics that came through was actually about business and self-development, which I thought was so interesting, because I'm like, technically, this is about education in the women's health space. However, you wanted to hear about mindset. So I'm like, sweet, I can talk about this. So one of them topics that came up, I thought, you know what, this is so relevant to kick off the year, because it's that time where we're like goal setting and thinking about what we want to do for the year and what we want to achieve and whatever. So one of the topics that came through was how to say no / prioritize you as things creep up around you. And then in brackets, it said like juggling too many balls, which I know this feeling very, very well. So I wanted to start with this because there are two parts to this topic. The first part is, how do you actually prioritize things that creep up on you that, are more about like a lot of the things that you're committing to or you're doing or opportunities that arise. So we're thinking more about those things. And the second part of this actual topic is, how do you say no to prioritize yourself? So we've got two parts. So I'm going to cover those. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of background story here because I love a good story and I find it so much easier to relate to. I have been notorious in my life for getting distracted by opportunities that have just popped up out of nowhere. And I've thought they were great ideas and jumped right onto it without really thinking too much about it. Most of the time, this was for me, it was in my early days of my career. So I was like hustling to make money at the time. So I was very driven by decisions around what would actually work in terms of making money, because I had none. I was like first year out of uni, trying to like get a business, not charging people enough money. So I was working ridiculous hours, a lot of, and then not really making anything. So anyway, so I'm going to give you this little story, which is actually quite funny. Well, I mean, I think it's funny. So I worked at this gym. If you haven't heard my story, you can go back to episode 1 and think, like, hear about my history. But I worked at this gym where I was doing mostly personal training, and an opportunity arose at this gym through another person that I knew to take over or run, should we say, a boot camp. Now, at the time, this sounded like a fabulous idea, a boot camp. There was like already about 30 women lined up ready for this boot camp. And this was because someone was like kind of stopping what they were doing and, handing it to me basically. But anyway, the background's not so important. But the boot camp that I was going to take over would require me to work mornings. It was outdoors. It was not related to the gym. So I had to find a space for the boot camp. And then I was thinking about the weather, and I would need undercover space. I'd need access to equipment or be able to store the equipment places. So I basically was like, yeah, let's do this. Like, I'm going to have 30 women. They're all going to be paying like weekly memberships to come to the, 5 or 6 morning classes that I run for the boot camp. It's going to be great. I'm going to it's going to be fabulous. It's going to be awesome. And then I'll finish up my boot camp in the morning, go to the gym and start PTing people. It was great. And I did all of this groundwork. So I basically contacted local schools. I found myself a school that I had an undercover space. They were happy for me to be there. I didn't have to pay any rent to them, I don't think, from memory. So it was like super cheap. And I set it up and I was like, this is what I'm going to do. It's going to be sick. And I launched the first week and I went to the actual school and did my first group boot camp session. And there was like 5 people there out of the 30 that were like keen. One, they didn't even know me. So like looking back at it, I'm like, that was the worst way to like take over something. It was like, they were like, who is this chick? Why would we come and train with her? Anyway, whatever. We live and learn. So I turned up at the boot camp. There was 5 people there. They were like not the best type of clients. Like I was like, these people don't really like, I just feel like they're going to drop out really quickly. They weren't super committed. Maybe they were. I don't know. I made assumptions. But anyway. And I did it. And I left the boot camp feeling like, oh my God, this sucks. I hate this. Why am I doing this? And when I really thought about it, I was thinking, what I actually wanted to do at that point in time was, 1, like make some money. 2 was like I was sick of working the shitty PT hours. So like waking up early, finishing late nights, working the crap split shifts, I guess you call them. I didn't want to do that anymore. And I was like, I don't know what made me think running a boot camp at the mornings like that before starting PT was going to be even helpful for that. But anyway, I also was a little bit like hesitant about the timetable component. I didn't really want to run a timetable of classes that were locked in every week. This is something I've always really felt like, oh, it just doesn't sit well with me. I really wanted flexibility and freedom in my schedule. And I think ultimately that's probably why I've worked for myself and ended up being in the virtual world, because I have the flexibility and freedom to schedule my days however I kind of want them, whether I work in the morning, in the afternoon, have split shifts, but I'm still at home and can still do things that are important to me. So that's always never really sat that well for me. And I always felt like every time I'd schedule these like group classes, I remember being like, all right, I'm not going to have them on Monday mornings or Friday afternoons in case I want to go away for the weekend. I'm not going to do weekends because I might want to go away. So like the whole timetable then became really limited. So I was like, okay, that's also a problem when I'm running a boot camp. And the other thing was like, I was also feeling like I wanted to do something that was a little bit more clinical and less like personal trainer. I was feeling a little bit lost in the transition of like, what am I doing? Am I an EP? Am I a personal trainer? Like, I just didn't really feel super satisfied. So for me, I was like, when I look at the boot camp idea and this opportunity that arose, that I was like, quick, yes, 30 women, they're going to be signing up to memberships. I'm going to get this much money every week. It's going to help me with my income. Maybe they'll filter into personal training. And then I looked at the realistic side of like all the things that it would take, or like what I was actually committing to. At the end of the day, the boot camp went against everything that I was really wanting to do with my work and my personal life. Like, it just did not fit at all. So the boot camp was pretty much the worst thing that I could have committed to at the time. But I really didn't think about that when I was like actually like the opportunity popped up in itself. And so this is what I think is really important when we're prioritizing what opportunities we say yes to, what opportunities we say no to, and whether or not we're actually doing things that we want to do. So I think it is incredibly important to get a little bit clear on what your vision is. So I actually talked a lot about this in the business call that I ran last week with my couple of girls that are in the business mentorship side. We have some group calls, but we talked a lot about this a lot more in depth than what I'm going to go into today. But thinking about what you actually want to do with your life and what you want to do with your work is extremely important. And that could be anything from like career goals and the direction of your career and what you want to do. And it could be just personal life and what you want to do in your life, whether you want to work weekends, whether you want to work night shifts, or whether you want to have flexibility in your schedule, or whatever that might look like. It's really important to have this vision. Opportunities are going to come up, and you can make a decision based on whether or not they actually align with your vision and goals of life and career. So, like, when I think about if I was really clear on what I really wanted to do with my work or my life in general at the time this boot camp opportunity came up, I probably would have just said no straight off the bat because it just didn't fit in. And I didn't think about it from this perspective until it was too late. And I realized, I actually don't like this and I'm not doing it, and canceled a week in after organizing all of this stuff. And I could have spent that energy doing something way more productive. But so that's the first issue, is like, what you actually do, is it really adding up to the big picture of what you want in life? And that's any aspect of life. It doesn't have to be career related. It could be like your personal life. Ultimately, your personal life is going to be driven by your ability to work and make money and support your personal life. So keep that in mind. The second thing is, I also believe there is a degree of doubt that you have when these things come up. And like, I'm pretty in tune with like my gut vibes and my gut feeling most of the time, but there's always some level of doubt in something, and that is really going to tell you whether or not you should be doing it. Let's be honest. We know when something comes up, you're like, oh, I'm just not sure about this. And you then say yes, and it's like, I wish I didn't say yes to that. Or you say no, and you're like, actually, I really was just too nervous to say yes to that because it's actually super exciting, but I'm scared. So, like, I think consider the doubt. The doubt is going to tell you everything that you need to know. And the other component that I actually heard this once in a relationship advice piece of, I can't even remember if someone told me this or if I read it in a book, but basically the saying was, if it's not a fuck yes, then it's a no. So if you feel those vibes and you're not like 100% in and it's exciting and motivating for you in every aspect of it, then you probably should say no, number one, straight off the bat. So I think that's really important. If you are finding yourself in that situation where maybe you're doing way too many things right now, you've got too many jobs, you've got too many different tasks at each of those jobs, you're feeling overwhelmed, maybe you're probably not doing every bit of everything that you can to the best of your ability, and quality starting to drop off, then you probably need to think about which one of the things that you are doing is not serving you and not adding to that bigger picture of what you want. Because ultimately it's probably a waste of your time that could be dedicated to other things. Now, obviously we need to consider, bills and whether you're doing something because it's worth some money and it's paying you to get to somewhere else. I think that's also important to consider. But then how much time is that taking you away from maybe building something else that will actually ultimately pay you more in the long run and support the life that you want? So we have to also consider a lot of things. Now, the second part is boundaries. We're going to talk about setting boundaries. I had let's call her a psychologist for a while, in a really tough time that I was going through. And this is so funny that I think back to this now. She would have been looking at me like, what the hell? Anyway, she basically said, all right, let's talk about your boundaries. What boundaries do you have in place at the moment in your life? And I was like, what? What do you mean boundaries? What's a boundary? Like, I had no idea what she even meant by this. And in the back of my head, I kind of probably knew a little bit about what she was talking about, but I really had no idea. So we talked about like personal life boundaries, business boundaries or work boundaries, relationship boundaries. Like what in your life are you like, no, this is crossing over my boundary and I'm not doing it, or I'm not comfortable with it and I'm not okay with it. I honestly, like, she sent me home with homework and said, I want you to write boundaries, what your boundaries are with family, friends, partners, business boundaries or work-based boundaries, personal life boundaries, everything. And honestly, I sat there with a pen and the paper and I was like, I actually don't know. Like, I don't know. And I don't think I was really ever brought up in an environment where that was something that we discussed or we talked about, or like we did within my family and friends at the time. So now looking back, I'm like, yeah, most of us were like little people pleasers where we just kind of like kept the peace and did what was right by other people, put them first, maybe over ourselves. And it was just because, like, people wanted to not upset others, I guess. But yeah, boundaries. Really, really important. And I think this is also really important with your clients. So if you're working with people and you don't have boundaries set up for maybe times that you're going to work with them, what services and how much support you're going to offer them, when they can contact you, all these different things that I think we need to think about that maybe a lot of you don't. I'm not sure. Maybe you are someone with really strong boundaries and that's you. But I know a lot of people do struggle with this. So I think it's really important to think about these type of boundaries, because ultimately they're going to allow you to make decisions about whether or not what you're doing is crossing over something that you don't want to do. So boundaries, set that up. When we're also thinking about prioritizing ourselves, these are things about ourselves. So this is the second part to this question was, how do we say prioritize ourselves when things come up? Being able to say no is really hard in this world, I think. Once you start learning how to say no, it's actually a lot easier. But I think we can say no with a degree of kindness and still be really nice about it. And I think it's important for us to understand that it is okay to say no, because things don't fit in to your schedule. Maybe you can't commit to it without being really present with that thing, whatever it is that you're saying no to, and communicating it from a place of, it doesn't really resonate with me, or it's not really helping me move in the right direction that I would really like to go, or I don't feel like I can meet the expectation that is required by this because I have other things going on. So if you're really honest with people about that and you're saying no with that level of kindness, it feels a lot less crap than being like, no, I'm not doing that. And it feels selfish. I think this like degree of selfishness comes about when we think about saying no, when in reality it's like, well, I'm also going to let you down if I say yes and then can't follow through with the quality, the level of commitment that is required for me to actually do that. So, or maybe it's even being present if it's like with your family and your friends because you've got other things going on. So I think it really depends on the situation, obviously. But if you are someone who also doesn't have boundaries, or maybe you do have some, but you're not very strong, then saying no to things is also really difficult because you really don't know how you feel about something if you don't really know what your boundaries are. So if that's you, I would really start by setting some boundaries around maybe what your vision is, and what you actually want to do. So if that means like saying no to work on the weekends because your vision is spending more quality time with family and friends and being available on the weekend, and maybe you want to be able to be really present at that time and not have to like quickly go to work and then come home and balance everything a little bit better. If that's something that's really important to you and your vision, then you probably should set a boundary around that. And then that makes it a lot easier for you to then say like, no, I'm not working on the weekends because these other things are really important to me. And it helps feel a bit nicer to say no in that sense. The other thing is that if this could also look like something about like, the hours that you work during the week. So for me, I was notorious for like I hated doing the mornings. I'm not going to lie. I'm not a great morning person to be like, I'm happy to get up early, but I'm not like really alert and present and like active and awake. Like it takes me a while to get up and wake up. My partner will vouch for me here. He'll be like, yeah, I know. My mum actually used to say, like, don't talk to Courtney until she's like had her shower and her coffee. And that was like the rule at my house when I lived at home. So if that just tells you about my morning routine and everything, then yeah. But if that means like I didn't want to work the mornings and PT clients at 5 a.m. I hated it. And I actually had clients that would be like, oh, I actually just can't see you at any other time of the day. Like I love to work out in the morning. I'm going to do more. Like I really want to do mornings. And in the back of my head, I was like, oh, I don't want to do this morning. But everyone was like, you've got to say yes to everything and you've got to work the crap hours because that's the PT life. So I would go, you know what? All right, let's do it. I'll train you at 5. And there was times where I did 4:30 sessions in the morning and I would be finishing work at the gym at nighttime. So I was much better at working at night. So I would have clients up till 8:30, 9 p.m. And I found like getting home, going to bed, and then trying to wake up for the first 4:30 session was something that I was like, this is just not sitting well with me. I was such a big advocate of like prioritizing your health and sleeping enough hours and getting that recovery and optimizing, hormones and balancing all of that out and just being healthy. And that, like, doing those hours really was crossing my boundary of like, no, I'm not working that early because my health is more important. And I just didn't say no because I felt bad about saying no. And I just thought like, oh, well, this is the industry. I'm going to have to say yes. But in reality, you don't. So if that means setting boundaries around what your big vision is, I think that's a really great place to start if you're someone that doesn't do that. The other thing that's really important is getting a lot of clarity around everything, especially obviously your vision, your goals, and what you want, is how you actually find the guts to set boundaries. So, and also follow through with them because that's also hard. Being able to say no to opportunities that might be good or to things that people ask you to do. If you aren't really clear on everything around your vision and your goals and what you want, you have clutter. So you can either be really clear or you can have a lot of clutter. I feel like there's nothing really in between, to be quite honest. But you also make really bad decisions when you don't have the clarity. And it's always, we all know that like if you're like got a lot of stuff going on in your brain, you're not really clear on the direction that you're going or what you want, then you kind of make all these decisions because you hope that maybe one of them will maybe make it more clear or make you feel a bit better about what you're doing and put you in the direction that you actually want to be in. So I think getting really, really clear, thinking about your life and what you really want from your life and setting the boundaries around that and learning to say no to the things that don't fit into that big picture is how you start to actually, I guess, prioritize the things that are important to you, the things that matter to your big vision, and the things that maybe don't matter. So that's kind of like my advice around this topic, I think. I feel like it's also important for me to say here that these are really hard things to do, especially if you tend to be someone who is a people pleaser. I cannot communicate how much of a struggle this was for me in like the early days, well, back earlier in my life, really. And it's something that I still really do struggle with now. And every now and then I have to think about like, oh, do I have boundaries set up around this? Or what is my vision around this? And if an opportunity arises, I'm so tempted to say yes because I've always been a yes man or a yes woman, should we say. Um, and it's not until I've been like really, really thinking about what I want out of my life that I'm like, actually, no, that's not really what I want to do. Like for a while there, I was like, oh, maybe I should run consults on the Saturdays and it really helps people have access to this because I believe in access to service. And then I was like, oh, I really don't want to work weekends. And once you start doing weekends, it's so hard to get out of it. And I don't want to be this person that's like always working on the weekend because I need to be able to enjoy life at the same time, or I would like to be able to, because that's part of my vision is to have weekends with my family and my friends and doing doing hobbies that I don't have, which I talked to you about at the beginning of this episode, but that'll change. So yeah, it's been something that I've really, really struggled with, but I'm definitely getting a lot better at this. And because I've also developed a lot of awareness around this now, especially the habits that I tend to navigate toward when I'm really cluttered or like when things do pop up, I can pick up on myself doing things that I'm like, oh, you're just about to say yes to something because you feel like you have to, and you don't really want to say yes to this. So you just got to practice doing it, everything, setting the boundaries, actually following through with those boundaries, saying no. But it does get easier. And the more you follow through with it, the less crap and selfish it actually feels. And I think you also then start to develop this like a little bit of like, I guess, character about you that like people are like, you know what, sometimes she just follows through with her boundaries. She's got strong boundaries and she sets them, and it's quite inspirational, I think. So I hope this episode gives you something to think about that you can take away and think about, your vision, what your boundaries are. Maybe you say no, maybe you're not saying no to things, maybe you aren't saying yes to enough because it's not fitting in with your vision. Who knows, wherever you're at with your life and career. But otherwise, thanks for listening all the way to the end. If you have a topic that you think would be super relevant, or you have a question that you would like answered, or you've got whatever it is that you'd like, please shoot me over a DM in Instagram, or you can email me, and I would love to turn it into an episode. Ideally, this is something that helps you rather than creates any stress around work and life. There's too much of that already. So I would love to share some insight when I can and what I think. So anyway, don't forget, like, subscribe, share, whatever it is. I would love to have you in the network. Reach out on the gram or in my emails. And yeah, thanks again. I really appreciate everyone who joins this community, because without you guys, it'd be pretty pointless. But otherwise, I look forward to dropping the next show. It will be a women's health research-based episode. So stay tuned for that. But otherwise, I will see you in the next one. Bye.